Slovénie, merci beaucoup
So the session
d'être avec
2.1
nous.
is
Alors, nous allons maintenant commencer avec
tools
la
in the
session
service
de
of
1,
quality teaching and content. A warm welcome to our
des outils
facilitator,
au service d'une pédagogie et d'un contenu de qualité.
at OECD
Alors, c'est
Center for
Rowena Fair,
Educational
consultant à
Research and
l'OCDE
Innovation.
et son centre pour la
You
recherche et
were the
l'innovation
former Deputy
sur l'éducation,
Secretary of
Rowena
Student
Fair, qui
Achievement in the
avant
Ministry of Education in
travaillé
New Zealand.
pour le
You're a
ministère
project
de
leader
l'éducation
in the
en
Education and Skills
Nouvelle-Zélande.
Directorate of the OECD.
Alors,
Where you
depuis,
leading
vous travaillez à
several new
l'OCDE
studies
aux
on
séries
children's
où
early
vous vous occupez
development and
de
on social
plusieurs
and
études
emotional
sur le
skills
développement de jeunes
and
enfants, le
school-aged
développement des
students.
capacités sociales
Your other work
et
in the
émotionnelles.
OECD includes
Mais à l'OCDE,
wider
vous avez
ECC
aussi
policies and systems,
travaillé
measurement indicators for the
sur
education-related
d'autres activités,
sustainable
comment
development
élargir
goals
les
and
politiques
education strategies
EAGE,
for disadvantaged
comment développer des indicateurs de
students.
mesure pour
Thank you very
l'éducation
much
par rapport
for being here.
aux objectifs du développement durable et comment élaborer de bonnes stratégies d'éducation pour les étudiants, les jeunes défavorisés. Vous êtes au cœur donc de ce sujet et j'espère que la session va être riche, que vous allez modérer. Merci, bonjour. Alors, permettez-moi de remercier l'honorable Margaret Norrie McCain de nous avoir rappelé qu'il y a vraiment urgence et qu'il faut vraiment progresser par rapport à ces questions. On parle beaucoup, mais il faut peut-être maintenant passer à l'action parce que c'est pour moi tout à fait urgent. Alors, hier, on a parlé d'énormément de choses. Nous avons essayé de voir comment on peut conceptualiser cette transition qui nous intéresse. On a beaucoup parlé de l'impact sur les enfants, les larmes, les peurs, les terreurs, et puis les bénéfices quand on réalise une bonne transition. Et merci aussi de nous avoir rappelé du problème non seulement de transition entre le préscolaire et l'école primaire, mais aussi de nous avoir parlé du problème de manque d'accès. Bon, on a aussi beaucoup parlé de solutions. Bon, les gouvernements ne peuvent pas prendre toutes les décisions pour tout changer, mais Margaret nous a rappelé que quand même les politiques publiques ont quand même beaucoup d'importance. Nous avons parlé de l'importance des familles. Je pense que c'est Angela qui l'a dit, que d'un point de vue des enfants, une transition continue est beaucoup plus importante pour le développement et la croissance des enfants plutôt qu'une approche parcellaire, segmentée. Et beaucoup d'intervenants nous ont parlé de l'importance des données, des statistiques, de faits pour informer nos choix politiques. Bon, il faut créer les données et c'est vraiment le point fort de l'OCDE pour qui je travaille, mais on nous a rappelé aussi qu'il ne suffit pas de créer des données, mais il faut que ces données soient accessibles et utilisables par ceux qui travaillent avec les enfants. Nous allons donc continuer la discussion ce matin, cette fois-ci en regardant les outils au service de cette pédagogie et comment on peut améliorer encore la qualité des résultats. Alors, vous connaissez peut-être notre intervenant principal, le professeur Hiram Siraj de l'Université d'Oxford, qui travaille dans plusieurs pays et qui a énormément contribué au travail de l'OCDE sur les résultats auprès des jeunes enfants, de très jeunes enfants. Alors, elle a beaucoup participé et contribué à l'étude EPPSE pour l'efficacité de l'éducation préscolaire, primaire et secondaire, et aussi au projet REPI, la recherche d'une bonne pédagogie pendant les premières années de l'enfance.
I would like to thank Nathalie,
Merci.
Aurelia,
Merci.
and Rowena for making it possible
Nathalie,
for me to be
Aurelia,
here today.
Andrew et
It is a
tous
great
ceux
honor
qui
and pleasure
m'ont
to be
aidé
addressing you.
à venir vous parler aujourd'hui.
I want to
Pour
talk
moi,
about
c'est
a very
vraiment
serious subject.
un plaisir.
And
Alors, je vais
that's
aborder
early childhood
un sujet
education,
très
care
important.
and staff quality.
L'accueil,
It
l'éducation de
seems to
jeunes
be
enfants
what
et
we
la
call
qualité
in
du
English the
personnel.
elephant in the room.
En anglais,
It's
on parle de l'éléphant
constantly
dans la
and we try
pièce.
to
C'est-à-dire,
ignore
c'est
it
quelque chose qui est
because
toujours
it
là,
is
mais
so
qu'on ne veut pas voir, on ne veut pas en
to do
parler,
something
parce
about
que
it.
ça coûte très
Colleagues
cher
have referred to the training of staff, the
régler ce
quality of
problème.
staff,
Bon, les collègues ont
and
beaucoup
why
parlé de
the
la
public
qualité
seem to be so
du personnel
resistant
pédagogique
to,
et
paying
de
taxes
la
to
résistance
fund for
des
that. Not in
contribuables
every
qui ne
country.
semblent
We
pas
see many
vouloir
of the Scandinavian countries
financer des
making much
programmes.
more
Bon,
contribution
pas
towards
dans tous les
training.
pays en Scandinavie,
So I wanted to start
on
my
investit
talk
pas mal
off this
dans la
morning, ladies
formation
and gentlemen,
de ce personnel
by
pédagogique,
showing
mais ce n'est pas le cas
an
partout. Alors, je
example
vais
of how
commencer ce
complex
matin en
the
vous
work that we
citant
do
un
as early
exemple
childhood
qui
educators is.
reflète la
And I think I can
complexité
still say we.
des tâches
I started
des
out as an early
éducateurs.
years teacher
Alors,
for a number of years
moi j'ai
in the
commencé
80s, like Kevin,
comme éducateur
and
comme
still
Kevin
feel
pendant
partly an
les
early
débuts des
childhood
années
practitioner
80.
as well as an academic.
Et
So I'm
j'ai
going to
beaucoup
show
travaillé
you
avec les
two
enfants avant
clips.
de me
One
consacrer
is called Dear
à la
Meredith.
recherche. Alors,
It's
je
from
vais
a
vous
video
montrer
called
deux
Adult-Child
vidéos.
Interactions,
Voilà,
communicating to support
le
learning.
premier, c'est un extrait de
I've done a lot of research, but I think
DVD.
there's nothing quite
C'est vrai
like
que j'ai fait
seeing
beaucoup de
practice in
recherches,
action
mais
to get
c'est
a
vraiment
sense of
la pratique,
where quality really
je
lies.
pense, qui
And I
explique
think this
mieux que toutes les
video
recherches ce que
helps
c'est la
us to
qualité.
understand why
Et cette vidéo
playful
va nous
learning
aider
and
à
teaching
comprendre
are
comment
complex actions.
combien l'interaction entre
And
le
I would
jeu
like you
et la
to
pédagogie et
look
l'enseignement est
how
une interaction
this
assez
teacher
complexe. Alors,
is
regardez
using her
cet extrait de
pedagogy,
vidéo et regardez
how
comment
she is
l'enseignant
using
utilise
both
sa pédagogie.
relational
Regardez
and
comment,
intentional pedagogy that we
en
have heard
fait,
so much
elle
about.
applique une
I'd like you
pédagogie
to think
tout
about
en
her use of language.
interagissant avec
How is she
l'enfant. Regardez
questioning?
comment
How
elle
is she
utilise
extending
le
vocabulary?
langage.
I
Elle
would
pose
like
des
you to think
questions,
about
elle enrichit
her
le
interactions
vocabulaire
with
de l'enfant.
with the children.
Elle
How
a une bonne
knowledgeable is she
interaction
about child
avec les
development
enfants.
and the individual
Et
children
combien
in her
est-ce
care?
qu'elle connaît
What kind of
de la
skills
pédagogie
is she
par
using?
rapport à ses enfants?
And
Est-ce
where
qu'elle
is the respect and equity
est-ce
that
qu'elle
she's
utilise cette
showing for the
compétence
children?
spécifique? Est-ce
So if
qu'elle
we could just
montre une
see
attitude
Dear Meredith,
respectueuse par rapport
that
à
I've
ces jeunes?
intentionally chosen two examples
Alors,
where
chère
the adult
Meredith,
is assisting children in
deux
their play,
exemples
their free
que
play.
j'ai choisis
And
où
that was
l'adulte
intentional. In this
accompagne
nursery,
les enfants qui
it's a
sont en
mixed
train de
ability
jouer.
nursery with children with
Bon, et dans
problems as well as
cette
children
crèche,
without.
nous avons
And,
des enfants
they
avec
do,
des besoins spécifiques, des enfants
take all
avec
children
certains
from all
problèmes et
backgrounds.
d'autres qui en ont pas. Et les enfants
Hi,
viennent du milieu
dogs. This is the veterinarian's office.
différents.
Would you like to come in for an appointment?
We're not an appointment.
Vous voulez un rendez-vous, monsieur?
Are you healthy dogs or are you sick dogs? Your friends?
How do you write deer?
Deer. Let's think about the first sound. Deer.
I did D.
You did the D part? Deer. Next sound is E.
This guy knocked that down because he got a long tail.
Oh, he does. Now an A. Is he going in or out of the veterinarian's office? Out. He's healthy now. D, E, A.
Hey, stop that! You're making me mess this up. Look at mine.
Deer.
Okay.
R.
Lifted up the roof.
Curious about who you're going to say this letter
I
is for.
lifted up the roof.
With that long tail.
Whoa!
Wonder why dogs need long tails.
Because they have to lift up the
Because they have to lift up the roofs.
break them.
Sometimes dogs use their tails and they wiggle them when they're happy. Hey.
Now what?
Well, it says deer. Meredith. So you have to think about how to write the word Meredith. How will you figure that out?
Look at mine.
An M.
Look at mine.
I'm thinking about those cards that we have in the classroom with all of the children's pictures and names on them. Sometimes kids will use those to help them know how to spell names. Those orange cards over there. That could give you help.
I got it off.
Yep. Oh. Should we move some of these things out of the way again?
I want the weird day. Whoa! He came in.
Meow, meow, meow. Oh, the door closed. Meow, I'm feeling kind of sad about that. I wanted to visit. Meow, oh, now I can go in. Meow. Are you a friendly dog?
Yes.
Oh, good. Thanks. I'm going to visit you in the veterinarian's office. I need to have my fur checked. How far did you get? You got Meredith. Now you can do the dith part.
This is for you.
It is. Tell me about this writing on there. That's when it's an invitation? And does it tell me about the party? Because I need to know the details.
There's going to be a unicorn pinata and horse rocket ships and
horse rocket ships.
My favorite part is the chocolate chip cake.
That's probably my favorite part too, the chocolate chip cake. But one thing I need to know about is what time and what day.
It's on March.
It's in March, and what time? What time in the day? What hour is it? It's going to be at
it's going to be at 8:30.
8:30 in the morning or 8:30 at night?
8:30 in the morning.
In the morning, so it's a morning party. Okay, in March. I'll have to put it on my calendar.
We can go straight into the other one. Calling a doctor. Yep. It's coming.
Call up the doctor to make the appointment for you. Oh, do you want me to be the owner?
Yeah.
Could you be the dog?
Yeah, I got a phone.
Oh, I got to call a doctor. What's the doctor's phone number? Do you know it? 5.
Hey, I know the doctor.
5. Let's try it. 50. What's the next one?
I know the doctor's phone number. I know.
You have another number too?
I get one.
Do we have another number? We pressed 5 and 0. Is there any more numbers in it?
One. I don't want it to press
One.
No.
You want to do it yourself? Are you going to talk to the doctor?
It's doctor.
Hello? Yes. I have to make a doctor's appointment, please. Do you have any time today that we could come in? I have a sick baby.
Hey.
What's wrong with the baby? They want to know.
I was trying to help her and she didn't want to go anywhere.
Her mother was trying to help her and she didn't want to go anywhere.
I don't.
Yeah, I guess she's. I'll find out. Does she have a fever? Yes, she has a fever.
Hey.
Does she have any other symptoms? Does she have a cough or a runny nose?
I know.
She has a cough.
I know. And then the dog bit his tippy toes.
The dog did what?
The dog bit the baby, and the baby got caught by the dog, and the baby got a scratch.
Oh, the baby has a cough, and we think that maybe the baby has a scratch. The dog might have scratched the baby. So we can come in for an appointment? What time should we come in? 3 o'clock? Can we come in at 3 o'clock? Okay, 3 o'clock. Okay, bye. 3 o'clock is when we're going to go to the doctor's.
Definitely my phone.
Okay. I think we should clap that teacher. She's fabulous. We could spend the next 10 minutes analysing those two clips. But I think we have enough expertise in the room to know why that looks like high-quality practice. And we want to be able to identify and help teachers and staff to be able to engage in practice of that nature, where they are simultaneously intertwining knowledge about high-quality interactions, the importance of extending vocabulary and meaning, the importance of being child-centred, truly child-centred, following the children's lead, respect and equity being part of the practice. However, my time is too short and I have to tell you a little bit about my research. So, what I'd like to say is that if we could get the slides up, please, that would be great. Along with other studies, the Effective Preschool, Primary and Secondary Education Study, which is a longitudinal study that I've been involved with, has shown that a high-quality early education can be supportive in terms of children's learning and development in the long term. The research confirms the importance of early experiences and the powerful combination and interactions not only of preschool and what happens in preschool, but also the quality of the early home learning environment, and then later the primary and secondary school the children go into. And I found myself thinking very hard about that and the importance of it in improving social skills, self-regulation, literacy and numeracy, and have found that we need to look at transitions in the way Sue talked about yesterday. I've spent a lot of time in classrooms doing observations in countries like Australia, New Zealand, the UK, Singapore, Hong Kong, and it seems to me that one of the issues around transitions is around the quality of the experience for the child within a day. What we tend to call continuous provision. The results from the studies we've been involved in clearly demonstrate the importance of investment in early years, especially for children from disadvantaged backgrounds and those who go on to transition to primary education of poorer quality. However, in the EPSI study, we did find that children who had gone to very high-quality preschools were able to perform as well in lower quality primary schools. So a very high quality preschool education almost inoculated them against bad primary schools. Not that that is what we want, but it is an important point. So if we have high quality anywhere, we need to get some of our disadvantaged children into those settings. This means that a more conscious awareness of the pedagogic processes that are involved in working with young children are likely to be extremely valuable in the development of professional early childhood educators. In our research, we identified what excellent quality looked like as defined by value added to children's development. So it didn't just look good, it had an impact on children's minds and well-being. And we developed tools which assist researchers, policymakers, and teachers to identify, implement, and improve services for young children's learning. Above all, our work recognises child agency in their learning and makes explicit the adult role through her pedagogy. If you want to look at some of the EPSI reports and measuring quality, there's a website here, and there are more than 70 reports there which are freely downloadable. Some are very technical, and for people who can't sleep well, you could try reading some of those. But for those of you that are pushed for time, ministers, policymakers, there are research briefs that summarise. After we discovered our more effective settings, we conducted a sub-study that I designed where we drilled down to look at, in an ethnographic and a numerical way, what sort of practices were responsible for that high quality and better outcomes for children. So the REPI study, and this is one of the reports you can download, is based on a sub-study of the EPSI. It showed that a child-centered, truly child-centered practice, like the clips we saw, was the kind of practice that enhanced children's development. But it does require an advanced understanding of both relational and intentional pedagogy. Now we have here that the kinds of things that you would expect, warm responsive relationships, high quality interactions, including what we in EPSI term sustained shared thinking, that is conversations that extend a child's thinking, setting clear educational goals and planning, the point that Craig made, understanding what education is about in early years, and staff qualifications. But also an important finding was that parental engagement that gave parents information about what the Early Childhood Centre was trying to do in terms of children's development was vital. So over the last 20 years, I've been working with colleagues to develop the kickers, which is the curricular and interaction quality rating scales. And they were initially developed for research purposes to identify quality in early childhood settings. And if you are going to use them for research, they do require careful training, inter-rater reliability, and so on. But today, I want to discuss these with you as a practice development measure, and one that looks at process as much as structural quality. Not so much to test staff, not so much for accountability pressures, but in an effort to democratize quality assessment. We want practitioners to be able to use these. We don't put any limits on photocopying pages or adapting items for practitioners to work with their staff. Our aim is not to make money, it is to allow people to improve their practice from an evidence base. The ECOZ, which is on the left, there's also an American version which is yellow, and that has 4 subscales: language, math, science, and diversity and equity. And interestingly, in terms of our child outcomes, diversity and equity in EPSI had the highest correlation with children's literacy, numeracy, and well-being. So for me, you cannot separate equity from quality. The two are related. The STEW scale, Sustained Shared Thinking and Emotional Wellbeing, the blue one in the middle, has 5 subscales that focus on high-quality interactions, self-regulation, cultural, social sensitivity, and well-being. And both of these scales have strong predictive validity. The ECOZ up to the age of 18, we've shown that 1 year of quality, high quality and related to ECOZ continues to have an impact on children's outcomes at 10, at 11, at 14, at 16, and even at 18. And the most recent addition is the movers, because we felt that governments and policymakers are obsessed with children's social and emotional well-being. They're obsessed with children's cognitive well-being, even more than their social and emotional well-being. But when we observe any small children, they're very active, they're very physical. They want to do things. They're doers, and it's really important that the physical side is recognized as much. In fact, if you observe any small mammal, the biological drive is to play. So this subscale looks at movement play and the importance of that for young children, things like tummy time, the different systems of physical development, including basic skills. But the 4 subscales look at resources, materials, high-quality interactions. They include things like in the STEW around problem-solving, critical thinking, and vocabulary extension. So I've given you a very quick insight into the scales, but I'll show one item out of the STEW, because the subscales have items that can be rated from 1 to 7, very much like the American Neckers. And inadequate is unacceptable practice. So here we have an item from the subscale supporting learning and critical thinking. And this item is called encouraging sustained shared thinking through storytelling, sharing books, singing, and rhymes. And you can see the progression through the item of what is, how the child is perceived and how the educator is perceived. So very little individual interaction during storybook time. Staff involvement with stories books is limited to whole group time. So this practice would be unacceptable. Minimal practice is basic. It's not bad practice, but it's not helping children to develop further. For example, staff respond to children asking for stories by helping them recall stories, locate and read books, and so on. Staff invite children to join them to sing. Staff engage children in choosing songs. So this is minimal, basic practice, and good would be staff encourage the children to hold and read books or retell familiar stories, including their own stories. They sing songs or join in with rhymes and word games. This is what we would probably call more developmentally and culturally appropriate practice. However, excellent is staff using factual books to support children's understanding of concepts. They engage children with the stories. They support anticipation of familiar words and actions. And this is really more aspirational. We find very few centres that are in this category, but we do find some. And we find with our professional development, we can often get people up to this level of quality. And this is the category that I would say that offers stretch in the zone of proximal development. So I've got to be very quick now and start talking very fast. But I'll try not to disappear out of the building by talking too fast. So we have a number of current research studies, over 1,500 centres that are using some of the kickers. We've developed quasi-experimental repeated measures designs, some clustered randomised controlled trials. Most of them are taking place in the UK and Australia. And what we're trying to do is analyse the data that we've got on quality from a range of centres, hundreds of centres, and we're looking at where the strengths and weaknesses are. So we found, for instance, in terms of higher end scientific and mathematical quality, teachers are not good at concept development. So even in the higher quality settings, maybe they'd be getting 3s and 4s. In the lower quality settings, they'd be getting 1s and 2s. So even though you've got variability and range, you've got the weaknesses in the same settings. So we've developed a professional development around 6 to 10 days over 3 to 4 months that we have shown once implemented with staff leads to better outcomes. The first report to come out is the field report, Fostering Effective Early Learning, where we had 90 centres, 45 intervention, 45 control, and the children in 7 months after the intervention, just 7 months of soak time, or cook time, although I don't like to think about small children cooking, but we had improvements in an aspect of language, 2 aspects of mathematics, and some social emotional development. So what are the policy implications? I will put that up for a little while because I've run out of time, and I'll let you read those. But I just want to end with a thought, the kind of thought that Margaret started with. We have to think, what kind of system do we want under the current circumstances for our children? For our children, the current circumstances may not matter as much as they do to us, because we're heading for what people have called the 4th Industrial Revolution. And 21st century skills are going to be important to our young children. They won't be entering the workforce until 2035. And if you think of how things have changed in the last 25 years, for us, they will change tremendously. Is our workforce fit for purpose? I would say categorically no.
eux vont connaître des changements encore plus bouleversants. Et est-ce que notre personnel d'enseignement est prêt? Je dirais un non catégorique dans aucun des pays.
That more than anything,
Et je dirais
we need to teach our children in the early years what it means to be human before anything else. And that's a complex thing to teach. I want to end with a tiny little story of a study by the NFER which looked at transitions into primary school of 200 primary schools. And our children go to primary school when they're 4, so they're really very, very young. And as part of the study, they asked the children what they liked and what they didn't like about their transition to primary school. And all the children universally hated one thing about primary school. And that was what we call carpet time. A bit like what you're doing now, and you might be hating it too, but carpet time. And then they asked the children why they hated that. And I think one little boy summed it up beautifully. He fought hard when he was asked, this 4-year-old, and then he said, well, it's just a complete waste of your life, isn't it? Thank you very much for listening.
Merci beaucoup de votre écoute.
Thank you, and reminding us of the power of child voice and child agency, and if we listen hard enough, the children will tell us everything that we need to know. But also of the complexity, the immense complexity and skill and high quality interactions in assisting children to learn and develop and grow in these early years. And are we ready for it? Have we built systems? Are we supporting the educators to deliver that? Okay, I'll now introduce our panel and ask them to come up to their seats. So if I can firstly, the panel can come up and take your seats. Firstly, I'd like to introduce Angela Hall. Angela is based at the University of Toronto, where she is an assistant professor in the Dr. Eric Jackman Institute of Child Study. And her research, and this flows on really nicely from Aram's presentation, her research is focused on play-based learning. Okay, next I'd like to welcome Laurent Desquash. He is a senior lecturer in educational sciences at the University of Rouen. He leads research on pedagogical differentiation practices and learning support. And his research focuses on both école maternelle and in schooling. We're also very fortunate today as well to have Yoshi Gaga. Yoshi has had responsibility for ECC at UNESCO for the last 20 years. So she brings, she works across many countries, including developing countries, so she brings a global perspective to our panel. And also I'd add that she did her PhD on transitions from ECC to school. And finally, I welcome Pauline Slot. Pauline is a researcher in educational and learning sciences from the University of Utrecht. Her work is focused on the quality of ECC provision and particularly on professional development of staff. Okay, so I'm going to invite the panel to make some comments and then we will have a discussion. So Angela, can I invite you to start? Thank you.
Bonjour, good morning. In Ontario, Canada, where I'm located, I am a professor there. I was a classroom teacher there, teaching mostly kindergarten, and I am the parent of a kindergarten child. And I'm thrilled that we have a universal program for 4- and 5-year-olds that is attempting to bring together the worlds of ECE, early childhood education, and elementary schooling. There are two main ways that we're doing that. One is we're actually bringing together the workforces. So our kindergarten classrooms currently have a registered early childhood educator working alongside a certified classroom teacher. The lovely thing about this is they are trained separately, have different foci in their training, such as the early childhood educator will focus far more on child development and play-based learning, an area of interest for me, whereas the classroom teacher would be far more thoroughly trained in the academic content areas and also knowledge of the school system. The second area where they're trying to bring these two worlds together is through the actual curriculum. So there is a development developmental focus, as has been typical in ECE, where part of our expectations or standards are the development of social, personal, physical, and cognitive development. And we are also bringing in the academic standards that are common in elementary schooling, literacy, mathematics, etc. The other piece that's very interesting about this program is the focus on developmentally appropriate practices. That is, we have a mandate to use play-based learning in our kindergarten classrooms, not optional. So what's very interesting about this is the complications that arise when we tell teachers they need to make sure that children are learning literacy skills, mathematics skills, and that they're doing this all in a play-based, developmentally appropriate way. And part of the complication comes from the research itself. So we have two distinct bodies of research in the world of play right now. One focuses on the personal and social development of children, and it advises adults that we should make sure that play is child-directed, free, socio-dramatic. Teachers and other adults should remain uninvolved in that play because essentially you'll ruin the benefits. You don't allow them to self-regulate within the play. You don't allow them to have the social negotiation that is necessary for their development. Good points, and actually validated by research. Second body of research discusses the academic skills development. And this body of research now will tell you the exact opposite. The teacher must actively be involved and engage with the learners in order to integrate academic skills into the play. In fact, the research done mostly, well, probably not enough, as already discussed, research looking at laboratory settings and classroom settings will find that if the teachers are not involved in the play, there's actually very little, if any, integration of academic skills. And that free play is actually discouraged by this kind of research. So how is this dichotomy in the research reflected in the classrooms? It's directly reflected. We actually, when we go to classrooms, see these two distinct groups of teachers that reflect exactly what the research is saying. We have teachers who say, play is only for their social development. I need to remain uninvolved. The second I get involved in the play, I wreck it. Okay, mildly. Somewhat accurate for the social negotiation and self-regulation piece. We actually know that it is better if we stay uninvolved. But when we're in a program where we also need to promote academic learning, this is very problematic. We do, however, have a promising second group of teachers, about half of our teachers, who actually see the combination between these bodies of literature. They see that, there's the possibility for academic learning and social learning and personal development and the development of self-regulation and physical development, all within the context of the classroom and play-based learning itself. So then we look at how is this dichotomy resolved when we get into a classroom? What does the implementation actually look like? So that first group of teachers who tells you that play is strictly for social development, they implement free play and only free play. That is child-directed play with no adult involvement. They set up beautiful environments to let this happen. There are definite benefits to this type of play happening in a classroom. The difficulty is that they are spending there's a free play for you. So primarily what we observe in classrooms is constructive, socio-dramatic, and play with toys. I mean, it is wonderful. The challenge then is any learning that is happening in the area of academics is done in the dreaded carpet time, as you called it. It's always either a whole class lesson that happens several times a day, and or the teacher withdrawing the children from that play in order to promote their actual learning. And if you speak with the children in these classrooms, they will tell you there is no learning happening in play. Play is just for fun, and the learning happens when the teacher's there. However, when we look at the second group and what they're doing in the context of their classrooms, we see this wonderful continuum of play-based practices. They look right from the free play, which is still included in these classrooms, but they also integrate other types of play where there are different locuses of control. So sometimes the teacher's in control, sometimes there's shared control between the teachers and the students, and sometimes the teacher is mostly in control of the play. So for instance, this would be considered collaboratively designed play, which is right in the middle. So in this particular context, we have, it's amazing that you shared this example earlier, because we're going to talk about a veterinary clinic, which actually originated as a pet shop. The children had a real interest in animals. The teacher met thoughtfully and had good discussions with the teachers. What would you like to turn our imaginative play center into? And they said they wanted to turn it into a pet shop. Apparently selling stuffed animals for a day or two is less stimulating than they'd imagined, and they decided they needed something more interesting and wanted to add in a medical component. So now we've got this wonderful veterinary clinic where children are integrating amazing skills. They are socially negotiating, they are self-regulating when they don't get their way in the social negotiations. And they're also doing things like writing appointment cards so that their pets know when to come back for their next appointment. And they're writing out instructions for the pet parents so they know how to take care of their animals. Also, there's the thoughtful integration of educator feedback. So at one particular time, the children were really querying, how do we know if this giraffe's leg is broken? And they said, we can't see inside. And so a thoughtful educator said, you know, have you heard of x-ray machines? Oh, my brother had an x-ray, says one child. And they have a thorough conversation. They look up information about x-rays. The children decide, of course, they will need this for their veterinary clinic. They use boxes to build their own. They look at example x-rays online and they copy those down and label them all, which shows you the immense integration of academic skills that's possible when a thoughtful educator gets involved in these play environments. And when there is sort of a shared locus of control. We do also have standards, though. So if we look at the other end of the continuum, which would be the more teacher-directed end, we can have learning through games. These can be thoughtfully constructed games that allow the children who need these skills to focus in a very playful way on developing them. So for instance, this is called a grid game, and these children sitting here are rolling a die, and every time that they put the right number of counters using their one-to-one correspondence onto the board in an attempt to cover them. They have wonderful math conversation doing this. No, this is not child-directed play at all. They did not create this game. They did not participate in its creation. The teacher did this entirely with a thought towards the content that they were trying to address in mind, and the children still thoroughly enjoyed it and had a wonderful time. So from these practices, we've developed this continuum that you can see up here. And I think the important thing about the continuum is that you don't need all these types of play to be included in every classroom at all times. In fact, that wouldn't be appropriate. It gives you access for different children who have different needs and different strengths and different backgrounds. And this continuum allows you to bring in the type of play that is most appropriate for the learning that you're trying to achieve and also for the children that you're working with. I think the other wonderful thing is we need to help teachers support them to learn these processes. And this type of continuum provides them with multiple access points. That is, if a teacher's more teacher-directed in their sort of orientation and their ideology, then they can start at the learning through games end of things, more teacher-directed play, and work their way towards the more child-directed, and vice versa is also possible. And I think finally, if you're interested in play-based learning, the Encyclopedia on Early Child Development has a wonderful open access resource where experts discuss both sides of the argument, I suppose, in the play research that I've shared with you, and also there are people who are talking about the middle, which is what I'm advocating in this particular presentation.
D'ailleurs, des personnes qui se trouvent au milieu du continuum que je vous ai présenté, et c'est d'ailleurs le point que je trouve le plus intéressant. Merci. Merci, Angela.
Thank you. That was a perfect follow-on from Around's presentation. What does it look like? You know, what do we understand? We can talk at a general level, but how do we start to get specific and develop tools and an understanding of what does high quality look like? Our next speaker is Laurent. So,
Laurent, vous avez la parole.
Bonjour, good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Je remercie les organisateurs de leur invitation. Je pense que mon intervention sera dans la continuité sur cette question de savoir si on a des espaces qui sont plus ou moins formels dans les formes d'apprentissage. Si je prends le jeu où on serait dans le jouer pour apprendre, ou si on peut avoir des espaces éducatifs qui seraient plutôt sur des dynamiques plus informelles et on serait là dans apprendre en jouant, ce qui posera la question du curriculum, mais moi je ne l'aborderai pas trop ce matin, mais je crois que ce sera fait. Et donc en fait, quand on regarde les liens entre donc scolaire, périscolaire, extrascolaire, le continuum, il passe aussi par différents formats pédagogiques qui, pour moi, s'appuient sur des invariants qui se jouent différemment selon les espaces. Et ce que je vais essayer de développer, c'est ça, c'est-à-dire comment pouvoir réfléchir à construire des modélisations pédagogiques qui à la fois respectent les espaces, les principes fondateurs, qu'un espace périscolaire n'est pas l'école et il ne faudrait pas qu'il le devienne. À l'inverse, il ne faudrait pas qu'une école devienne un centre de loisirs, mais que dans le même temps, il y a peut-être des principes organisateurs de nos pédagogies qui nous permettraient de penser une globalité. Donc, moi, je travaille plus sur l'école globalement. Et si je regarde l'école, elle est structurée sur ce qu'on appelle, ce que les sociologues appellent aujourd'hui la forme scolaire, c'est-à-dire des modalités d'apprentissage qui sont structurées, qui obéissent à des logiques d'apprentissage planifié, avec des systèmes de leçons, d'exercices, de mise en activité. Et je pense que ce qui manque notamment, par exemple, à ces espaces et qui pourrait être beaucoup plus inspiré des espaces non scolaires, c'est la place d'espace scolaire comme un lieu de vie et d'expérience concrète, par exemple. Et donc, penser des temporalités d'apprentissage différenciées me paraîtrait également un autre principe pédagogique qu'on pourrait voir de manière transversale. Et il me semble que c'est par là qu'on peut rentrer dans la question du continuum. Donc, si je vais là-dessus, la question est de savoir où trouver ces outils. Donc, moi, j'entends depuis hier plein de choses extrêmement intéressantes, des travaux de sociologie, de psychologie, de neurosciences. Et en même temps, je viens d'une formation plutôt de l'histoire de la pédagogie, et ça résonne très souvent. Ça résonne avec quoi? Ça résonne avec un héritage que, me semble-t-il, on a un petit peu perdu. Et donc, pour moi, le paradoxe d'aujourd'hui, c'est qu'une partie de l'innovation qu'on souhaite construire, elle est peut-être déjà, elle passe peut-être déjà par la réappropriation d'un patrimoine. La réappropriation d'un patrimoine qui est celui des pédagogues, qui est souvent peu connu des praticiens. Alors là, on voit en Europe en ce moment une grande mode sur Montessori. Montessori comme forme de l'innovation par rapport à l'histoire de la pédagogie, ça interroge, parce que c'est quand même pas une pratique très récente. Moi-même, je travaille beaucoup plus avec des pédagogues, à partir des pratiques pédagogiques coopératives comme celle de Freinet, ou celle de Fernand Houry. Et là encore, nous sommes dans des pratiques qui ont plus d'un siècle. Les pédagogues préscolaires, si on peut penser en Europe, nous, c'est plutôt des gens comme Froebel, Oberlin, en France, Marie-Pape Carpentier ou Pauline Kergomar, sont des pédagogues qui ont construit des pratiques qui, je crois, sont relativement respectueuses des principes que vous évoquiez tout à l'heure et qui pourtant sont très souvent peu connus des praticiens. Donc il me semble qu'un premier enjeu, ce serait de voir s'il n'y a pas une convergence à retrouver entre les intuitions, et c'est vrai que beaucoup de ces pédagogues avaient des intuitions fondatrices, et l'état aujourd'hui des travaux qu'on peut avoir qui viennent des neurosciences, de la psychologie, sur les manières d'apprendre des enfants. Et il me semble que toutes les vidéos que je vois passer depuis hier vont dans ce sens. Voilà. Alors, si je voudrais juste développer 4 points que j'appellerais les invariants de ces pédagogies actives, qu'on retrouve aussi chez d'autres pédagogues, comme un pédagogue que je trouve trop méconnu, et De Crowley, qui s'est aussi beaucoup intéressé à la petite enfance, qui vont avoir comme point commun de penser des espaces dans lesquels on pourrait favoriser tout ce qui va toucher à la manipulation, le tâtonnement expérimental au sens de Freinet, et aussi ce qui apparaissait dans la vidéo que j'ai trouvé très intéressante tout à l'heure, des formes de coopération entre enfants, des coopérations qui ne passent pas forcément par des choses très formelles, comme on peut le voir à l'âge scolaire, à l'âge primaire, mais des coopérations qui passent déjà par vivre dans un même espace, partager, entrer en interaction, des choses qui ne sont pas forcément formalisées, mais qui sont en fait essentielles à notre développement dès la petite enfance. Et donc, je développerai juste 4 points en essayant de respecter le temps. Ce qui a été, pour moi, ce qui peut être commun à tous les éducateurs, quels que soient les espaces, c'est la posture d'étayage. Là, on pourrait faire référence aussi bien à Brunner qu'à Carl Rogers, c'est-à-dire une attitude qui serait empathique, une attitude positive inconditionnelle, comme dirait Rogers, et avec un appui très fort, ça avait été rappelé hier, et pour moi c'est essentiel, à un moyen de développer l'attachement, la personnalisation, c'est-à-dire que les enfants soient pris en compte comme des personnes, et pas comme des objets dans nos espaces éducatifs. Et tout ça va permettre de se construire une estime de soi et une confiance en soi. Il me semble que cette dimension, elle peut toucher tous les types d'éducateurs, quels que soient leurs espaces. L'autre élément que je voudrais développer, c'est la question des apprentissages plus informels dans les dynamiques vicariantes. Nous avons besoin d'espaces dans lesquels les enfants puissent s'observer les uns les autres faire les choses. Donc le vicariant, c'est les théories de Bandura, pour ceux qui sont intéressés, qui montrent que nous apprenons beaucoup par imitation et en appropriation des comportements des autres par une analyse, en fait. Et je crois que c'est aussi ça qu'on a pu voir dans les vidéos tout à l'heure. Et ça me paraît assez essentiel. Moi, je suis français, je peux constater que l'école maternelle française, par exemple, de mon point de vue, a beaucoup moins d'espace de liberté, d'expérimentation et d'observation des enfants que c'était le cas il y a 20-25 ans, quand moi j'ai débuté, j'étais instituteur avant, parce qu'on a voulu scolariser, y compris la maternelle, et qu'on a beaucoup de mal avec le lâcher-prise. Et donc cette idée-là nous amènerait à penser que le lâcher-prise est nécessaire à certains moments pour laisser de la place à un troisième type d'activité, finalement des activités spontanées, indirectement liées au curriculum scolaire. C'est des activités qui aident à apprendre, mais qu'on ne pourra pas forcément relier directement à des compétences. Il me semble que dans les espaces préscolaires, mais aussi dans les espaces scolaires maternels, il faudrait peut-être qu'on relaisse de la place à des activités qui ne sont pas systématiquement reliées à des objectifs curriculaires. Et enfin, pour terminer et tenir mon temps, c'est la question aussi de la hiérarchisation implicite. Alors moi je connais plutôt les pays européens, mais globalement une hiérarchisation implicite entre les formes éducatives, entre l'animation, le préscolaire, la petite enfance, l'école, qui laisserait penser que l'école c'est plus sérieux que le reste, et que donc le jeu n'est pas une pratique très sérieuse, par exemple. Il me semble que là nous avons un gros travail à faire pour relégitimer toutes les formes éducatives, quelles qu'elles soient, quels que soient les espaces, pour penser l'idée que la pédagogie n'est pas réservée aux scolaires, que toutes les attitudes éducatives sont des attitudes pédagogiques à partir du moment où elles sont conscientisées. Et c'est là que nous avons peut-être un enjeu de formation très très fort, c'est-à-dire pour tous les acteurs de la petite enfance à redonner la formation pédagogique à toutes les personnes qui travaillent avec des enfants dans l'espace scolaire, mais également, je crois, dans les espaces de toute petite enfance. Voilà. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laurent.
Merci,
some time
Laurent.
ago, sort of in the last century, we used to have the saying about women. The definition of feminism.
La définition du féminisme, c'est la notion radicale selon laquelle les femmes sont des gens, sont des personnes. Et donc, dans certaines cultures, les enfants sont des personnes, ont des droits, mais ce n'est pas vrai dans toutes les cultures et civilisations. Les enfants ne sont pas toujours perçus comme des personnes dès leur naissance. Effectivement, les enfants sont des personnes et ont droit au chapitre. Merci. Merci, Laurent. La pédagogie n'est pas limitée à un espace. La pédagogie existe potentiellement partout et pour tous. Les enfants ne dissectent pas les parties de l'apprentissage et les espaces informels sont là où ils développent leurs relations, leurs compétences, leur capacité à être des personnes. Très bien. Yoshi, à vous.
First of all, thank you very much for the invitation.
De
It's very
m'avoir
exciting
invité. Il est passionnant de participer à cette conférence, notamment cette discussion libre.
As a member of UNESCO, we have the chance and opportunity to work with not only developed countries but developing countries. In fact, our programmatic attention are rather focused on supporting lower income countries. So I like to take this opportunity to bring in some of the perspectives or experiences from lower income country experiences because I felt that this is something that has been a little bit underrepresented up to now. My intervention is not going to be sort of solely focused on content or pedagogy per se. Rather, my intention is to share with you what kind of approaches that are existing that would help or facilitate children learn, grow, strive, and continue the education systems all the way up to wherever they like to be. So, in view of the practices and the developing world, I like to highlight sort of two approaches that are used very frequently. One is introduction of a one-year pre-primary class within primary school settings. And the second one is what people might call school readiness programs. These are sort of, well, I picked them because they are found very often in this context. And this is not to sort of, with the intention to play down other approaches that are existing, for example, family literacy programs, health-based interventions, and all very creative and innovative approaches that are existing and developing in the lower-income countries. So I just like to remind ourselves of sort of the context that we are talking about. So in 2012, we found, well, there has been an estimation from the UNESCO Global Monitoring Report that 250 million children out of 650 million children in primary school were not either attaining the grade 4 or not attaining basic skills at that age. So there has been a big alarm crisis about how can we sort of bypass the question of quality and relevance in education. We've been paying too much attention on access to education. So this is one sort of challenge that of course many of these children are not attaining what they should be attaining, or largely from lower-income countries. Also, we see that there are lots of challenges in terms of inequities, poverty, lack of electricity, lack of sanitation, and long journey to schools. So there are many issues that are compounded, which makes it sometimes very difficult for families to cope with and to give the chance to their children in attending preschools or primary schools. So in any case, there are challenges, but then there are also good news about what's going on there, because there has been a good progress in terms of looking at the education for young children and primary school children. So let me just go to describing a pre-primary class within the primary school premises. So this is probably some of you know, it's a very frequently adopted approach used by the government, because it's, well, now that more or less the countries are attaining or have attained the universal primary school, and so they are primary school premises, so they are building on the side the pre-primary classes so that they can give a chance for education for 5 years old. So we can see that in Pakistan, we can see in Bangladesh, Lesotho, South Africa. I mean, there are many examples. So just to illustrate how it goes, I like to take an example of Namibia, which has been introducing this approach since 2008. So they have been taking a phased approach. So starting with the most disadvantaged children, and they are providing a very holistic curriculum, so attending to cognitive, social, emotional, physical, and aesthetics, and ethical development. And the standard sort of teacher-child ratio is 1:25. So up to now, there are about 50% of children who are benefiting from this type of provision in the country. And now, with the time remaining, For me, I like to highlight also this approach, which is called School Readiness Program. So maybe some of you know this, that there have been programs introduced to give sort of accelerated short-term course or a program for children who haven't benefited from preschool education, in preschool participation. So this also, I like to highlight the example from Namibia, because they have introduced the school readiness program within grade 1. So working with the primary schools to ease the challenges of children coming into the school without any prior experience of preschool education. So they have a 5 weeks program, which is taught by, of course, by primary school teacher, and they do provide a holistic program, and it seems that this has been very, very beneficial, especially for those who haven't been benefiting from early childhood education. So I think it's worthwhile looking at what we can do, not only through early childhood education structures, but also within the primary school sector.
Du dispositif de l'enseignement primaire. Merci.
Thank you, Yoshi, and it's a good reminder.
Merci, Yoshi. Effectivement, il est bon de rappeler que même dans de nombreux pays, les enfants et les familles sont confrontés à de nombreux défis, mais la qualité de l'éducation est importante et il faut se pencher sur de nombreuses questions simultanément. Alors, Pauline, la parole est à vous.
Yes, good morning, everyone.
Bonjour à tous.
It's a pleasure to be here today. I work as a researcher in the Netherlands. I've been mainly involved in a longitudinal study following children's development and seeing how quality and curriculum contributes to that. So very much inspired by the ETSI study. And I've also been working on several European projects. And I'm really trying to get a better understanding of what really matters for children's outcomes, because I think that's the whole reason we're all here today. We've been here yesterday.
Car c'est bien la raison de notre présence ici et aujourd'hui.
J'aimerais
maintenant voir mes transparents. Merci.
So I would like to talk about mainly quality and curriculum, and I will not reiterate everything that has been addressed already today and yesterday. But as you can see in this picture, of course, we're always talking about the child. I mean, the child is the center of everything. And trying to think about what really matters for children, I think there are several aspects, and I highlighted here, I think the core aspects I feel are important. So obviously, it's about the interactions children have with teachers, but also with peers. And I feel that this is somewhat an understudied topic so far in a lot of research. We're focusing a lot on one-to-one interactions between the teacher and children. But we know that the interactions children have with other children in the center are very important as well. And of course, the quality of these interactions, as Iram has very nicely shown us, is very important. And it's of course about having these emotional, affectionate relationships and really trying to follow the children's leads and being child-centered, and at the same time trying to really support these children and enhancing their well-being and their development and educational outcomes. Another aspect which has been addressed also by Iram is the interaction children have with the materials and the environment they are involved in. And I think that it also relates a bit to the discussion we had on play, and is it about trying to facilitate children by providing a very nice and playful environment, providing them with the materials and providing them with the toys, or is it also about trying to contribute to that and trying to enhance these experiences and activities for children? So I would like to refer to this as the curriculum of provided activities. And when I talk about curriculum, I don't really mean a curriculum framework or curriculum guidelines in the sense of official documents, although these are also important, of course. course, but what I really mean here is that we need to think about what kind of content do we like to provide our children with. And I think that it's really important here to separate the content from the pedagogy. So we can have pre-academic content in a very playful way. And I think that it's really important to keep in mind and separate these two things and trying to think about what is beneficial for children's development. So I think that having this curriculum and thinking about the content can really help us to structure more children's experiences. And this can still be in a very child-following way. But what we know from the Netherlands, for instance, is we tend to have a very free play orientation. And I think that this means that sometimes teachers miss out on opportunities to really support and enhance children's development. And by trying to think ahead about structuring certain experience for children, this can really help the teachers in being more aware in the kind of experience they want to provide to children. So I think that there are two aspects that I would like to introduce that can help us support enhancing quality and also the curriculum activities. And I think especially trying to think about aligning children's experiences across different types of provisions. I think it's really important that children experience more continuity. So I think in the Netherlands we still have this big difference between preschool provisions or daycare provisions and the transition to primary school, which is at age 4. So we do not have carpet time, but we have circle time. So we sit on chairs, but the concept is the same. So I think that for children, this transition can really be very big. And I think it's important to try and align not only the curriculum, so the content, but also the pedagogy and the kind of quality we provide our children with. And I think one important way of doing that is thinking about professional development. So we know that professional development is a very important predictor and driver of increasing quality in ECEC. And I think that if we would want to align these experiences for children, the professional development can be a very important part, especially if we can try and bring together these different professionals working with children. So really trying to provide professional development activities that enable these teachers of different provisions to think about this clear vision and establishing the kind of goals they would like to achieve with children and trying to align the kind of pedagogy they can use to do so. So the final issue I would like to raise here is about equity, because we know that there are major gaps in how children enter primary school, and I think this is a universal finding. And I think we've talked a lot already about providing equal opportunities, so making sure there is universal access and increasing accessibility. And although I think that this is a very important part, I think that this is not yet enough. So another aspect is making sure that there is equal treatment, so making sure that there is a minimum level of quality for all children. But even here, making sure that we have this minimum level of quality does not ensure that these children have equal outcomes. So I think that both of these initiatives are not going to be sufficient if we really want to address inequality. So I think that the aim should actually be a little bit more ambitious than that, and we should aim for having equal outcomes. And having equal outcomes means that we may want to have more specific measures and address specific attention for the children who need it the most. So experiences from the Dutch situation shows us that having a very targeted educational approach in our case meant that our disadvantaged children were attending provisions with higher quality interactions, but also higher quality in terms of the kind of activities they were provided with. And this enabled these children to catch up. So although the gap was quite big at age 2, by the time children enrolled in primary school, this gap was cut back by almost half. And I think that this is at least partly due to our targeted policy. So I really would like to advocate that we keep in mind that it's in the end about having equal outcomes. Thank you.
au moment de l'accès à l'école primaire. Et cela permet d'obtenir des résultats de même niveau proche. Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. Donc, ce thème de l'équité des résultats, effectivement, les enfants arrivent à l'école à différents stades. Et donc, ce qu'on leur fournit à l'âge de 4-5 ans est très important. Donc, il faut réfléchir à la continuité, comment apporter un soutien en tant que parents, éducateurs. Et il ne faut pas oublier également les expériences très précoces entre l'âge de 0 à 2 ans. Alors, les questions. Alors, en attendant les questions du public, je vais poser une question aux intervenants. Alors, nous avons une question dans la salle. Avons-nous un micro dans la salle? Donc, nous avons...
Please go ahead. I don't know if we can get you a microphone.
Peut-on donner un micro à la personne dans le public? Alors, je ne sais pas si c'est la même question. En attendant le micro, voici une question pour Laurent. Dans quelle mesure les pédagogues peuvent être intégrés dans la préformation des maîtres en France? Et qu'en est-il des éducateurs de jeunes enfants?
On parle au conditionnel. En fait, je crois qu'aujourd'hui, il y a eu un changement massif de formation, notamment des enseignants, qui est parti beaucoup plus sur les enjeux didactiques, qui sont essentiels, et qui fait qu'il y a une dimension, alors là je parle du système français, mais une dimension psychopédagogique, dont on a beaucoup parlé depuis hier, qui passe à la fois par la connaissance, l'identification des besoins de l'enfant, qui je crois était au cœur de la pensée pédagogique depuis plus d'un siècle, notamment dans le cadre de l'éducation nouvelle. Donc moi, mon point de vue est qu'effectivement, tout enseignant devrait connaître ce patrimoine, non pas pour être dans une position de réappliquer des vieilles recettes, puisque pour une certaine partie des propositions pédagogiques sont très datées et sont en partie invalidées pour certaines, mais au moins pour avoir un réservoir de techniques, d'outils, de pratiques qu'on puisse envisager avec distance critique afin de nourrir des dispositifs plutôt que réinventer, on dit en France, le tiède, c'est-à-dire globalement refaire, avoir l'impression de la nouveauté quand on est sur des vieilles pratiques qui, par certaines, ont parfois échoué. Donc mon point de vue, c'est ça. Je crois qu'aujourd'hui, la pensée pédagogique, en France en tout cas, n'est pas du tout au cœur de la formation des enseignants. Et ça me paraît très intéressant qu'elle puisse être beaucoup plus présente en complément des approches didactiques et psychopédagogiques.
On top of psycho-pedagogical and didactic
my name is Pierre Winnicki, and I'm a founder of an organization named Trust Inside. My question is about trust in education, trust between children, parents and teachers. We've developed a model which helps objectify, measure and build trust, which is named the tree of trust. So my question is, does this issue of making the relationship to trust in children and teachers as well become and make it conscious, the relationship to trust, is it an issue that relates to your work
à la confiance entre les enfants et les enseignants? Est-ce que c'est quelque chose que vous prenez en compte dans vos recherches sur l'éducation? Alors, qui souhaite répondre? Qui souhaite répondre?
Eran, can you kick off? Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Merci beaucoup pour votre question.
I think trust is part
Je crois que la confiance fait partie de la pédagogie relationnelle. Tout d'abord, il faut que l'on reconnaisse que les écoles et les préscolaires est important, mais les parents et la famille est encore plus importante car c'est ça qui a véritablement une incidence sur les résultats. Donc tout ce qui essaye de construire, de créer une relation dans ce triangle entre la famille, l'enfant et l'école ou le préscolaire est très important. Et cela dépend également sur quoi vous mettez l'accent dans cette confiance. Je crois qu'il faut des liens de confiance entre chacun de ces rôles. Quel est le rôle de l'enseignant ici? L'enseignant agit à la place du parent, mais ce n'est pas le parent. Il faut il n'y a pas de pédagogie de l'école à la maison, même s'il est important qu'il y ait confiance entre les enseignants et la famille de façon à ce qu'il y ait un environnement propice à l'apprendissage à la maison. Il faut que les parents puissent accéder au programme scolaire. On parle du programme scolaire comme si on pouvait le livrer comme une pizza, mais il s'agit d'aider les enfants à accéder à ces éléments. On a parlé d'empathie également. Je crois que ça, c'est très important également pour aider les gens à accéder à des choses. En tant que parent, en tant qu'enfant, si vous allez à l'école et vous n'avez pas le sentiment d'être compris, d'être respecté en tant qu'individu, valorisé, et si vous avez le sentiment que que vous n'êtes pas considéré comme important ou que vos questions sont pas importantes, et bien là, cela n'est pas propice à l'apprentissage. Dans l'étude EPSI, nous avons utiliser l'échelle Arnett concernant la qualité des relations entre les adultes et les enfants. Et ce qui m'a paru intéressant, et je crois qu'on n'en fait pas état suffisamment, Brenda l'a mentionné, mais on s'est aperçu qu'il y a 4 sous-échelles et les relations positives est la seule qui est positive. Les autres sont la permissivité, la punition, le détachement, qui peuvent être liés à des comportements perçus par les parents ou les enseignants. Et le seul qui est important, c'est la sous-échelle positive. Et nous nous sommes aperçus que les enseignants étaient un petit peu biaisés vers cette sous-échelle, ce qui était une bonne chose. Ils aiment bien être avec des petits-enfants, ce qui est une bonne chose, mais ceux qui étaient détachés, punitifs ou permissifs avaient une corrélation directe avec les résultats des enfants. Donc on ne peut pas dire uniquement qu'il s'agit d'enseignement, de pédagogie, d'apprentissage. Il s'agit également d'empathie, de relations et de confiance. Merci beaucoup, Aaron. Est-ce que d'autres intervenants souhaitent commenter? Oui, j'aimerais ajouter quelques mots. Concernant l'équité, la confiance est d'autant plus importante. Donc, si vous tentez véritablement faire une différence et combler cette différence, il faut établir de bonnes relations avec les parents et veiller à ce qu'il y ait ces relations mutuelles de confiance. Yoshi,
just a very quick reflection
très rapidement, une réflexion concernant la confiance en réfléchissant à l'éducation préscolaire et au début de l'enseignement primaire. Je crois qu'il y a différents éléments en comparant ces deux niveaux. Une des grandes différences est l'ouverture aux parents.
The structure being open to talking to parents, to welcoming parents, and having the classroom
l'accueil des parents, les échanges avec les parents, permettre aux parents de voir ce que font leurs élèves dans la classe. Sur la base de mon expérience, j'ai le sentiment que dans le préscolaire, les parents accompagnent leurs enfants, c'est l'occasion de parler à l'enseignant. Et c'est là que l'on commence à construire des relations fondées sur la confiance, qui est très important. Mais lorsqu'on passe à la première année, deuxième année de l'école primaire, cela n'est pas aussi facile que dans l'enseignement préscolaire.
it's probably cultural.
C'est probablement dû
in terms of how primary schools and early childhood education programs have been functioning. But then, in the interest of transition,
scolaires et préscolaires, mais je crois que l'ouverture aux parents
really creating opportunities for dialogue
and de dialogue et de se connaître mutuellement, je crois que cela devrait être favorisé aussi bien au niveau primaire que préscolaire.
We have another question.
Yeah, thank you very much, and many thanks to the great panelists and presenters for the ideas. I have a question for the panel about the role of culture in understanding quality, and particularly in countries that have had lots of changes in the populations that are there, and also really appreciated Yoshi's comments about what's going on in Namibia. Could you just offer a few thoughts of how you address that question when you're looking across diverse populations, how we come to one definition of quality or multiple definitions of quality that reflect cultural backgrounds?
De qualité. Et comment tenir compte de ces origines culturelles très diversifiées. Yoshi?
Thank you very much, Abby, for your very important question. It's true that as we work in diverse settings in diverse countries, the culture issue is really becoming key in creating a common meaning of quality across different populations of different backgrounds, languages, and so on. I think there's no, I mean, from my experience, I think there's no sort of a one-size-fit approach to creating a common understanding about quality within a given setting. And I think that the part of the exercise has to be done, of course, at the policy level, at the local level, at the central level. I think all those different levels should be engaged in sharing their ideas and their priorities, their interests, and their concerns about what is it that we want to give to our children, what it is that we want from these programs. So I think that will be sort of one of the starting points in order to work on this idea of getting into a common sort of understanding of quality. There are many different factors that we can cite. For example, for languages, of course, in Namibia there are, I think, about 13 different sort of dialects or languages that are used in school setting in the early grades. So how can we give an experience which will be satisfactory for all these children, especially when the children from different language backgrounds are mixed? It's a very difficult question, but I think that what I hear very often is about the parents saying and the teachers saying, well, children are the most important resource. They are the treasures. They are carriers of our cultures. And when you start sort of listing all these things, then I think there'll be an opportunity to discuss what are the things that we can connect in common and not. I don't think we need to be everybody needs to be in agreement about what quality is, but then maybe the basic things like what we provide in early learning settings might we should kind of create a common understanding.
Thank you. Aram, would you like to respond? I think this is a very important question, and it's a complex question. I had two teachers from the same school who do home visits for reception children, and one of them came and said, you know, oh, the home was like this, there were problems, you know, the children were still eating with their hands, you know, this is in an ethnic minority home, the teacher is English. Everything was a problem. Another teacher talked to me about going into the home, and she said, you know, when I walked into that house, everything was different for me from my experience. She said the smells were different. The organization of the house was different. There were people sleeping in the living room and chopping up vegetables at the same time. And she said, I wonder what the school feels like for that child. Now, for me, the last teacher is the one who is child-centered, who is decentering, who understands quality for the child. So it's not just about, universal quality, it's about the ability to look at how that child can access that quality, but then you have to put yourself in that child's shoes, and the families too, and have the same empathy and trust that we talked about. Another aspect might be through cultural brokering. One of my doctoral students, who's almost finished now, Sarah Klaus, works for the Soros Foundation, has done an amazing study on Roma children in Eastern and Western Europe. And this is one of the most deprived communities in Europe. And she has found that bilingual and bicultural assistants offer cultural brokering and greater access and equity for Roma families for early childhood education. So I think we have to be, what I'm saying is we have to, this level of empathy and trust has to go beyond what we know for us to let go of our knowledge and sometimes be very open to the knowledge that other people have. Our schemas can cope with it, So my own view, from being a teacher in the 80s when hardly there were any black teachers in England, and parents would come up to me and say, are you really from the same country as me? We've never seen a teacher that looks like you, because you look like us. And that was quite novel to me. And many of my other people from my community were bilingual assistants, and I used to think it would be great if they became teachers. 38 years later, we now have lots of teachers that look like me, that look like lots of other people, and we now have head teachers and we have people in policy. So I think it takes time for things to happen, but we have to remain optimistic and make the effort. The quality is both universal in some aspect, but also very localized, and that we have to negotiate.
So the processes of change are complex and they do take time, and it's never one thing, it's many things at many fronts. It is now time for playtime, actually, off the mat. And so playtime to build relationships and in an informal space. Can you join me in thanking our panel this morning? Thank you.